Welcome and thank you for joining us for our Workday chats today. I'm Ernesto Boada, your host for today's discussion. If you have any questions, please share them via the comments below. Well, today I'm thrilled to be joined by Ryan Schlimpert, a CIO at Drury Hotels. Ryan, do you want to give some words?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here with you today. Ryan Schlimpert from Drury Hotels, and happy Workday customer, here to share a little bit about our experience.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm also thrilled to have Amy Smith, the CFO of Drury Hotels as well. Amy?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and excited to be here and tell you a little bit about both Ryan and I's partnership, but also a little bit about our experience with our system Workday. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, today CFOs are under growing pressure to master adaptability, remain responsive in the face of constantly shifting landscape. In parallel, CIOs are moving into a much more strategic role, harnessing the opportunity to realize digital finance transformation. But gaps persist, threatening to undermine their progress. We're excited to explore how CFOs and CIOs can work together to overcome challenges and drive transformation. So, taking advantage of our guest, let me start with the first question, if is that okay? So, to start our conversation, what are the top challenges CFOs and CIOs faces as they look to digital transform finance? So, Ryan, let me start with you.
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind being in hospitality is the COVID experience. It hit us really hard. So that was quite a challenge. But beyond that, the first thing that comes to mind is really that legacy tool set that we were on. And we've been on a 20-plus-year-old on-premise system that wasn't being upgraded and wasn't really keeping up with our business, was putting us in a bad place from a security perspective. So that was an enormous challenge. But now that we've fully upgraded our ERP and all of our HR systems onto Workday, the biggest challenge now is how do we take advantage of all the capabilities that are out there and really put our business teams in a position to meet all these evolving business needs that are out there. And so we've been really focused on putting the right team in place with the right positions, roles, and skills through hiring, training, organizational changes to really put our team in a position where we can have a huge impact. And as we've done that, it's not only just getting that team and the skill sets in place, but it's also teaching the accounting team the art of the possible. And so maybe in the past, you've had to accept this tedious manual work that you've had to do. But now, even if an accounting team member doesn't necessarily know how to use technology to address that, at least knowing that there's a better way and that they can raise their hand and say, hey, this has taken me a lot of time. If we could optimize this somehow, it would really help. So I think getting off that legacy tool set and now really taking advantage of it is the biggest opportunity in front of us. Other than that, the other thing that comes to mind is around data. And so just leveraging our data better. And so Amy, if you want to talk to that more from the business perspective.
Yeah, so there is a huge opportunity, and call it a challenge as well, with having a system that has all of this information and data in it. Do we have it cleansed? Do we have the right coding in place to do what we want with that data and to slice it and dice it and take it to that next step of really driving good business decisions from that data? And sometimes that's the biggest challenge is you have so much data, it's becoming overwhelming for our team. So how do we make sure we have the right data at our team's fingertips at the right moments in time? What do you want on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, quarterly? And then what are you doing with it? Is it data that's giving you insights to make better business decisions and to help support the overall operations team and business? So the other challenge with it too is what's the format? And we've got a lot more options with that now than we ever have in terms of creating dashboards. And I think one of the challenges with that is the possibilities are endless. So where do you begin and where do you end? And what's really useful and helpful to our teams that will help us make better, faster, more relevant decisions for the business? And then I think that the other thing that we're moving more towards, and as a private company, this hasn't necessarily been a huge focus for us because we're not focused on quarterly earnings calls, but we're trying to be more forward-looking. And that's forward-looking both just from a forecasting perspective of traditional finance, but also just in terms of what data are we giving our teams to then make good decisions that are not all backwards data looking. So how can we leverage the power of this system to help us look forward and not just make all of our decisions based on backward-looking data and information?
Well, this is great to hear because, I mean, definitely, Ryan, you mentioned that you guys have the opportunity to upgrade your systems. You're on a much newer platform with very rich set of capabilities. Now, data becomes the center of the work and how do you do? I mean, Amy, you're talking about how do you use the data on a timely basis? What kind of data? Well, that actually leads me to the next question. So with all this that is happening where you guys are, let's get into skills. So what impact is finance transformation having in the skills? I mean, you did mention about data and things like that. So what are you doing with your people in the IT perspective as well in finance perspective from a skills perspective?
Yeah, maybe I can kick that off a little bit, but the skill set is critical. So we know that some of these traditional roles, like Ryan and I talk a lot about, you've got the spectrum. You've got a traditional pure accountant, finance professional, and then you've got this traditional IT. And we need to sort of bring those two roles closer to this center point where you've got skill sets that play in that finance, accounting, and know that space really well, but also are comfortable starting to dive into some of what would have been a traditional IT role. And then similarly, having someone that is really good on IT but doesn't totally have that business savvy on the accounting and finance side to understand those challenges is a challenge as well. So trying to do two things. One, upgrade some of our talent in terms of bringing those roles closer together through outside recruiting. But then what can we do to help our existing team, who we have a lot of longevity, which we're really proud of, but with longevity comes some challenges when you're going through change and trying to help our team through that, and what skill sets they need and what training do we give them and what opportunities do we give them to think about that. Ryan uses this term, the art of the possible, and that's a real challenge when you've got a team that has been doing kind of the same things over and over and over again, and helping them to see, is there a use case? Is there an easy example where we can show that, hey, the way in which you're performing your day-to-day duties is manual and needs maybe an upgrade and a lift. And we've got a great team when we look at Ryan's side that can help us rethink along with this great tool that gives us all sorts of opportunities to change that. But I think what we found is that getting some small wins, giving our team some really good examples of where can we put this to work, then gets their mind thinking a little bit differently about, here's what I do every day, and it takes me 10 steps to get to X, Y, or Z. I wonder if there's a better way. And they don't have to have all the answers. Ryan's team has all the answers. But they just need to know that there's maybe an opportunity or that there's a problem. And sometimes it's that's the biggest challenge. And then as we get more of these resources that we talked about that sit in this kind of center space, we've got a lot more talent that can help us put to work what we're facing in terms of some of the talent gaps.
Excellent. How about you, Ryan, from an IT perspective?
Yeah, on the IT side, I mean, Amy really touched on it, but it's less of that pure database or coding or dark ERP configuration skills, and it's more of those lightweight configuration skills of configuring business processes, report writing, and those sorts of things. And so really those soft skills and that business savviness really comes more into the forefront of the skills we need going forward. And really on both IT and finance, I would add, is really managing the change. So change management becomes critical for a couple reasons. Number one, we can make change much more quickly now that we're on a modern platform that is constantly getting updated with new features that we can take advantage of. And so managing that change, and it's not only just for our back office teams, which is what our teams were traditionally, if we change our ERP, it impacted the accounting or the supply division. But now we have so much through self-service that if you're changing something, you really have to think through the impact of thousands of team members from a user experience. So what kind of training, what kind of communications in that overarching change management becomes a key skill set for our teams that traditionally didn't have to worry as much about that on the back office teams.
Well, this is excellent, because the way I have it right now in my mind, we talk about the platform, the having a brand new platform. We talk about data. Now we talk about the skills of the team, which then drives my next question. And I think, listen to the two of you, I'm hoping to hear great advice as well, which is how can finance and IT leaders successfully partner to drive this transformation forward? So tell me about it. Let's start with you, Ryan.
Okay. Well, first off, it helps working with somebody you enjoy working with. So we got that going for us. But then we meet on a regular basis to really stay aligned. And we put a large focus, as we talked about, getting the right skills in the right team. But then to take that a step forward is how do we optimize how we work together? And so we discuss things like, how's the team organized? What are the meetings that we have? What's the cadence of those? How do they manage the requests from the business and that intake and the backlog of work? How do we prioritize that? How do we partner on the upcoming Workday releases? And so overall, that alignment and how we work together is key. And a couple examples of that is we try to embed our IT team with our business teams, to the point that they're attending the accounting team meetings and they sit in that area of the building so they can get up and collaborate and ask questions and forge those relationships and partner together. And we use the same tools to manage that backlog of work and our work items, so that the accounting team and the IT team are in this tool. They can see the work, they can see the priorities, they can see the status of them, what the requirements are, make sure they're in line with what they were expecting. And so we think that that's a key way to help us successfully partner to make this transformation happen. And then I think she alluded to it earlier, of just asking those questions and really staying abreast of the technologies that's there, but then asking the team, what's taking you a long time? How can we do this smarter, faster, and better? And really changing that culture and mindset that we're trying to progressively optimize all those things so that we can shift people from tasky manual work to that value-added work of driving revenue or optimizing our costs and those sorts of things. I think the last thing I'd say is just us having a clear vision. So kind of setting that tone, what's that vision or where we're trying to go? And so we work on our roadmap and make sure that our IT and finance teams are up to speed on that and aligned on that.
Excellent.
Yeah, and maybe adding to that, I think the key thing too that, and Ryan touched on this, is the embedded resources in our team, and both of us actually inherited that before we came to Drury. So the setup was there, but having these team members from IT that support specifically our finance, our HCM, we have a supply operation, is critical. So you don't have to get in a line when you need something done, and then you also aren't dealing with a different person every time you're different IT professional every time you're trying to accomplish something new. And so they know what that team is faced with and the challenges they're faced with. They're like an extension of our finance team. Often you'd never know that they actually sit on Ryan and the IT team, so that's helpful. The other thing I'd say is Ryan and I talk a lot when we're in the search for new talent, or when we're looking at organizational realignments. We're talking about that together to make sure we're both kind of on the same page, and also saying to each other, how is that going to impact you, Ryan, or how is that going to impact your team, Amy, if I make this shift or this change, and what do you think? And having that sort of relationship and trust and ability to have those open communications is really important. We recently had we called it a project manager on the finance side, that the position was open. This was a real opportunity to bring in a resource that knew the accounting and finance, but also was really comfortable playing in IT. And it took us a while, and we did finally find what we thought was the perfect fit. We had Ryan's embedded IT resources that were part of that hire. They interviewed them, and we value that input as much as we do those from our own team. And so we all partnered on that, but then at the same time had another resume come in that looked just as strong as this person we loved. And so at the end of the day, we interviewed both, couldn't decide, and Ryan and I had a great conversation and said, hey, I've got someone on the IT side that I'm looking for in the next 6 months. Let's hire them both. And one will sit on the IT side and one will sit on the finance side. And now we have two fantastic resources that are kind of bridging some of those gaps we talked about earlier. But that wouldn't have happened if the two of us weren't communicating and having trust in each other. We had to give one offer before the other, and knowing that at the end of the day, we're going to work together and make this work for both sides was critical.
This is excellent. And actually, interesting enough, my internet got dropped, but I joined pretty fast. But brings my other question that I have just to add on that. I mean, great partnership, great working together. Has the whole working remote or flexible working status now has improved or adding to this collaboration, or maybe make it more difficult? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think it's worked out. I think we were going live with our finance implementation through when COVID occurred. And so we were one of the first to go fully remote on that implementation and did it on time and on budget. So that worked out well. And we've got part of our corporate team in St. Louis and part in Cape. So we've relied heavily on teleconferencing tools and those sorts of things just to stay connected. And then, as I mentioned, some of the tools that we manage our work now, that we can stay aligned that way remotely, that all helps. And we certainly have tried to provide more flexibility. So we have much more remote work going on than we have in the past. And that, I think, certainly helps for, the team member perspective of flexibility and all that. But then with these different tools that help us to stay connected. And then by having the teams and really focusing on how they work together, so when they are together in the office, they're able to collaborate and forge relationships. It helps when they are remote to really work well together. So I think we're trying to find that balance. And so I think overall it's helping us be effective. And we've evolved with the evolving times.
Excellent. I mean, I truly, really, really like the way all the information you guys have been providing, how all is connected, right? And definitely, just to summarize, it is the objective and the strategy gets shared between finance and IT. So I think the way it works and the way you guys are doing it is fantastic. So let me bring you to probably one more question, which is, what would be one key piece of advice you would like to share with audience as they look to move forward on their finance transformation journey? Amy, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think, as I've said this a couple of times, but one of the keys for us has been, as we've got our technical IT teams shifting more towards having a business focus, and similarly, our business focused teams, so our finance focused teams, shifting more to having an IT focus and kind of a blend that sits more in the center space than the traditional roles have sat, is important. And then embedding those resources so that they're part of both teams, almost seamless in terms of, it doesn't really matter if you're reporting up through IT or if you're reporting up through the finance side, as long as Ryan and I are aligned on priorities and projects. we can work together with each of those team members to make sure we're making progress on our key initiatives. Having technical specialists that have a real good appreciation for the process side of accounting and finance is really important, but just having true technical accounting and finance resources, it's evolving to this skill set that is really totally different. And the biggest challenge there is making sure that your existing team that maybe wasn't trained with those types of resources in mind, that you can still use them and bring them along and have some small wins along the way and help them see that they can evolve their skill sets without necessarily this formal education in that area. So I think that's critical for all this to work. And the other thing that I think we're realizing as we go is we can have a vision. Ryan and I can have a vision about what we want, that, you know, the art of the possible, the automation, but ultimately it has to be kind of a grounds up effort, and the team has to be embedded in it. They have to want it and work together to move it forward. It can't just be coming from the two of us. So we try to do that with some of these small wins to help everyone see we're not here trying to get rid of resources, right? We're here trying to say, hey, you can do your job in a different way. You can provide value and use the skill sets you have to really drive some business decisions, as opposed to keying and task-oriented day-to-day tasks.
Excellent. Ryan?
Yeah, I would build on a lot of what we talked about already. I think the advice is getting that right team, getting the right organization, making sure you're really working. I think throughout my career, where technology has really thrived and where the magic happens is where those business teams and IT teams are really working in tandem well. And then that change management. Do not underestimate the change management, because that can be a huge challenge. And so just put as much time as you do on the technology itself as you do with the team and the change management. But the other thing I would add, for us at least, is just an ERP upgrade in an HR. We moved our entire HR suite in ERP. That's a huge task and can be quite overwhelming. But I think in this day and age, if you don't, and you're on an old system that you're trying to shoehorn, you know, the changing business needs that are out there, trying to wrap it with robotic process automation and just getting a more complex ecosystem, you're going to be just going further and further behind. And so I think biting the bullet and getting onto that new platform, I think really sets you up for success. And as you see things coming with all that system together and all that data in there versus in a myriad of spreadsheets and different things, you can do so much with the data, with whether it be just visualizations and analytics to bring that to life, but also with artificial intelligence and machine learning and automation to truly start to transform how the finance teams do their work. So I think that would be my last piece of advice, is just go for it.
Excellent. I mean, in addition, I'm taking with me the sentence you guys have been saying a couple of times, the art of the possible. I really like it. So thank you very much, Amy and Ryan. Really, really, really thank you for spending time with us and sharing your insights. I truly personally enjoy this conversation, and I appreciate all your time. For our listeners, stay tuned up for our coming CXO Indicator Report, which takes deep dive into the results of our survey of 1,060 finance and IT leaders. And join us again for our next episode of Workday Chats. Thank you very much, and goodbye.